Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
Welcome back to another edition, I guess the first edition in a while, actually, of the Daily Memphian's Tigers podcast. This is Grizzlies beat writer Drew Hill, the ex-Tigers beat writer, but I'm joined by Steven Johnson, who is our current Tigers beat writer, and Geoff Calkins, who is our columnist at the Daily Memphian. And this is an emergency podcast because it has been a whirlwind of a 48 hours. Has it been 48 hours or has it been more than that? It feels like closer to 48 hours here. Maybe a little bit less.
Even less than 48 hours.
Yeah, less.
In terms of we're measuring it from the Shams report. Yeah.
Yeah, because Shams Charania of The Athletic put out a report that Penny Hardaway is a serious candidate for the Orlando Magic head coaching job. Penny went and interviewed in Orlando. He reportedly impressed. And then here we are. The latest on Penny Hardaway and the Orlando Magic. I will actually turn this over to you, Geoff, because you updated your column last night to reflect what you have been hearing. Why don't you tell everybody the latest on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how this stuff goes. As people know, in the world of the NBA, and you know, Drew, now that you're across the street to that side of things, when it comes to big coaching news, that sort of thing, there are two main news breakers, Adrian Wojnarowski at ESPN and Shams Charania. So when Shams or Woj, tweets something, it's news. And we all knew that Penny was going to get interviews, and we knew that he was going to be a candidate in Orlando. But I think there was an assumption that it was sort of a courtesy candidate or who knows, whatever. And so then when Shams reports that he interviewed and did very well and was a serious candidate, well, that's why this thing accelerates. And I think why we've spent the last 2 days sort of pondering what that might mean. And then you hear from all kinds of things, and Steve has, and Drew, I know you have, and from people either on the Memphis side or the Orlando side or people who know Penny or whatever else. And so there's been all sorts of stuff flying around. But last night I talked to two people, one on the Memphis side of things, who said he thought there was a 75% chance that Penny would stay. And then an NBA person who basically said that they didn't think Penny was, going to be getting an offer from Orlando. And indeed, I was on my radio show recently, just this morning, and I was talking to Gary Parrish, who's also plugged into the world of college basketball. And he happened to get a text as he was talking to me. And the text Gary said from someone who would know that Penny is not a real candidate. By that didn't mean that he never was a real candidate or wasn't real that he interviewed and did well or whatever. But when push comes to shove, he is not going to get the job. And we don't know this well enough to emblazon on the front page of the Daily Memphian. Penny definitely staying at Memphis. But from what I've gathered, from what I've heard, from the people I've talked to, from the people Gary talked to, this ain't happening. I'm pretty comfortable with that. Penny is going to be the Memphis basketball coach going forward. And this moment in time, we will look back on it. And I think the way we look back on it will depend on what happens next, right? I mean, we're going to get back to our normal programming now, recruiting, Larry Brown, all of that stuff. And we'll look back on this and think, boy, That was an interesting little episode, and who knows? It wasn't great that he's, didn't get an offer and is now going to take the team to the Sweet 16, or maybe we'll look back on it, in another way. But to me, that's the way things stand now. It's looking, let's just put it this way, highly unlikely that Penny's going anywhere.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, as I mentioned before. I mean, following that initial report, had talked to somebody who would be plugged in with the Magic, who essentially said, yeah, like Penny interviewed and he was impressive, like kind of confirmed what Shams had said. And it almost felt as if it was like, part of it was courtesy to Penny because he's meant so much to Orlando the same way he's meant a lot to Memphis. And then part of it was like, yeah, we've considered him as if he's a serious candidate. And then, you hear from the Memphis side during these things, and it's like, it almost feels like to some degree, it's a little bit of chicken with the head cut off. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, where is Penny going to go? Penny?
To me, it's instructive that the tone of a lot of that stuff was panic. And so it's instructive of how much folks over there who are embedded in it really think he's significant and want him to stay, right? I mean, there was a sort of a feeling of alarm about it. I don't know, Steve, as you've been embedded in all of this, what's been your perspective as it's played out?
Oh, well, from the people I talked to, obviously, if he received an offer, which was like he won't there, I think he was leaning towards taking it. I mean, I think even though, say what you will about the Orlando job, NBA job is still an NBA job, and there's still the looming infractions case, so who knows, maybe that played a part in it. But I think overall, just from a timing perspective, I think that panic was just because it seems like there's a lot of, I guess, good momentum around the program currently with the roster. They're also in the running with 2 5-star kids, that one, Jalen Duren, 5-star center, who could possibly reclassify. And he's on campus at Kentucky right now. So we know how Coach Cal is. So, it wasn't an ideal time to have those rumors coming out when you're involved with, these highly recruited kids that could come in and help you out, not only next year, this year, but also next year as well, too. So, but from the people I talked to, including what you guys are hearing now, looks like it was kind of panicked maybe for nothing. I won't say nothing exactly, but I think another thing that just jumped out about me, I feel like the Orlando job will come open probably again within the next 5 years. So there's really no rush for them to bring Penny in. They can let him, do a little bit more. Memphis try to accomplish a bit more. And then, they've done their due diligence so they can bring him in for a second round of interviews down the line if that job comes open.
Yeah, I think there's a difference, though, because with part of that, because if the job reopens, if Penny hasn't done anything at Memphis when the job reopens for a second time, I think his chances are hurt, right? Mm-hmm. Which is part of the reason why there's logic would say if Penny gets offered the job to be the Orlando coach, which again, we don't think will happen, he should take it this time around. If he ever has any hope or any, dreams of becoming an NBA coach, then now is the time to jump on it. Whereas, if it opens up for a second time, he has to deliver here at Memphis in order to continue to look like a good candidate.
Yeah. I think you're getting a sense of how hard it is to get that job. It's there he is. And honestly, to me, in terms of Orlando's trajectory, this actually was the perfect time for Penny if Penny was going to be a candidate. No, he hasn't accomplished much in college, if we're being honest about it. But it's a program that right now they're not expecting to win. There's not a lot of pressure on the incoming coach to win. It's coaching a bunch of young kids and seeing sort of how it unfolds. And from that perspective, Penny would have been an interesting marketing tool for them and everything else. Now, I think Drew's exactly right. And there's no accident. There's no mystery about this, and Penny would welcome it, but he has to win. And he has to win both in terms of just satisfying Memphis fans, in terms of living up to his own expectations for the program, and in terms of if he ever does want to be an NBA coach, he's going to have to accomplish something along the way. It's one reason why Juwan Howard, it seems to me, was much better situated to make the move to the NBA had he wanted to, is because Juwan Howard arrived later in college, but he has proven more. I mean, if we're being honest about it, Juwan Howard has won, and Penny has yet to win.
So, I mean, personally, if say the next 3 or 4 years, if Penny hasn't won to the level we expect, at least, maybe at least one tournament run that goes into the second weekend, then he's probably just not ready to be an NBA coach. That's how I would personally see it. So I think both of you guys are right, though. But either way, I think it would be if he got the offer, I think he probably would have taken it. But I guess the good news is for Memphis fans is that it doesn't seem like it's coming. But now the pendulum kind of swings back to Penny. And I think it maybe add a little bit more pressure onto him, which, there's always going to be pressure in Memphis. But I think it add a little bit more, hey, you were flirting with the NBA. Now, there's even a greater sense of expectations of what you want from this team this upcoming season. And like I keep telling people, I think it's not a perfect roster. We know about the point guard. I think they could use another big, but in terms of experience, talent, and just everything you need in terms of a veteran team, I think it's going to be his best team if everything works out right.
Geoff, I have heard you mention a couple of different times the idea of how now Penny stays and everyone can celebrate it and say, see, Penny will never leave us. Celebration. Penny's here. He's still here to be here. Do you get the sense that it's working out that way? Because I don't get that feel from Memphis fans right now. I think Memphis fans are happy that he's staying, but they're not celebrating.
I don't honestly think Memphis fans have dawned on it that he stayed. What I'm talking about is that, I mean, really, well, first of all, it's not official.
It's not.
We're saying it. And secondly, until I started saying it, this morning on Twitter and in my column, I don't think, and then on the radio, I don't think there's been a lot of, I think if you ask the average Memphis fan walking around right now, they think, oh, Penny might go and Penny might stay. I don't think it's people they haven't heard this podcast yet, that we believe that he's going to stay. So I do think that once this is natural. Once he decides to stay, makes it official, there will be we love him. We saw this, for example, with Marc Gasol. When Marc was a free agent and he decided to stay, it was, we know Marc loves us. And I really do think Marc loves Memphis in the same way Penny loves Memphis. But I'm not sure he got the offer from San Antonio that he wanted, and yet you still, you rally around your guy and you put the right spin on it. Now, are there some Memphis fans, and I've heard from them, who will say, God, I wish he'd gone? Yes. There's some who think they could do better. There's some who've been disappointed in the first 3 years. And to be honest, one thing is true. Had he left, it would have avoided any possibility of a messy ending. You would never have had to have the Larry Finch, oh my God, what are we going to do? It hasn't worked out. Like, had he left, you'd have some disappointment if he'd gone, but he left to go to the Orlando job. No one could criticize him, really. Whereas if he stays, there are many possibilities here. One is that he wins like he says he was going to win and whatever else. One is that he doesn't, and it gets messy. And that is one of the possibilities. I don't think it's the most likely. Like Steve, I think you're going to be good this year. But that is one of the possibilities. And there are definitely Memphis fans, not the majority by any stretch, who would have been happy had he jumped.
Yeah, as you mentioned, this Orlando job's interesting because they don't have much, right? They've got young players, but they don't have much, and they got the fifth pick.
A couple young guards.
It is not a very appealing job. So, we don't want to say for sure Penny is staying yet, because who knows who could turn down that Magic job. I think somebody would take it, but if Penny is third on the list of their candidates, or second or third or whatever, and they met, and the first people say, I'd rather wait and go to a better situation, then you never know what could happen. But for now, it seems likely Penny will probably stay.
I have a question for Steve, which is, Steve, you are optimistic about this team going forward, and you've said that. How much hinges on the health of Earl Timberlake, and what do you understand about the health of Earl Timberlake? Is that all assuming that he's going to be peak Earl Timberlake, and should we be concerned? Should Memphis fans be concerned about that?
From my understanding, it seems like his rehab is going fine. He should be, as far as I know, 100% by the start of the season. But I think it does rely a lot on his health. I wouldn't call him. Memphis has a lot of guys that in the pinch, if they need a couple possessions that can kind of run the offense. Earls is one of them. He's not necessarily a point guard, but just having a guy like that, I think the recipe for winning in today's college basketball game is I think you need an NBA guy or two. And he will be that guy. Despite only playing 7 games, he's still projected as a first-round draft pick by ESPN, which just goes to show you what type of talent he has. They have the veterans with DeAndre and Landers and all those guys, and I think they only need one freshman and Josh Minot to really just contribute this season. So they have everything, but you need Earl to be that bona fide NBA guy, the guy that, you've seen it, Drew's seen it. Memphis has those stretches a lot in games where they just need somebody to get a bucket. I think Earl can be that guy, and he's also a guy that can help them get a stop, which, defense isn't a problem for them. So if we see the best version of Earl Timberlake, that's only going to make this team even special. I've been reluctant. I've just been saying I think they should be good. I think they should contend for a conference championship. But if he plays his potential and, maybe even exceeds that and, gets to be projected as a lottery pick, then Memphis could be a team that, we heard it last year when they went on that run. A lot of people thought they could be a team that made it to the second weekend. So I think they have that same potential, but Memphis has always had potential. It's just about getting it all together. And you would think with all the experience that Penny has and the roster has that this will be the year. If it's not this year, then, I wouldn't get pessimistic, but, it just screams that this year should be the year that he breaks through.
Steve makes a good point. You know who else was a projected lottery pick? Musa Cisse. And that didn't work out. But there's a big difference, I think, between Earl Timberlake and Musa Cisse, both from a player's perspective, because one's a big who's not the guy that's going to go get you a bucket, and the other is a veteran who's a transfer coming into your program who's we've already seen can play really well at the college level. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think Earl Timberlake is super important, and, he's got to be that lottery guy if they're going to be great. I think that's a good take. Geoff?
The other thing we expect to happen very quickly is, again, we don't believe Penny's going anywhere. And the next thing that's going to happen very quickly is Larry Brown's going to come aboard. I think we feel pretty confident in that. Yes?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll be very soon. And, that was the other aspect of this hire. That's been the other thing floating around, right, Geoff? And part of this, Penny Magic saga part 2, I guess, because he already had the first Magic saga, has been, the administration and their feelings towards bringing Larry Brown on board. But it sounds like at this point, they're in and they're going to let Penny do what he wants to do. And if that's bringing in Larry Brown, who's been his mentor, then they're okay with it, right? That's your understanding?
Yeah, my understanding is if they're essentially saying it's Penny's program and the buck stops with Penny, that means both, letting him make the call, and then also, letting him be responsible for whatever, good or bad comes from that, right? And so it's an interesting approach. But I'll be honest, I don't have any worry that Larry Brown is going to get him in trouble, at 81. I don't think he's going to be out there handing out envelopes or anything at 81. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds, what his impact will be on the team and all of that. But I understand that it's quote unquote a bad look from some people's perspective, but yeah, I certainly am not obsessed with that. It'll be entertaining among nothing else to see Penny Hardaway and Larry Brown sitting next to each other on the bench. It'll be entertaining to watch, entertaining to cover, and I think it'll probably result in better basketball. So, going forward, I think we've established this is a critical year for Penny, and I think it will only help him to have Larry Brown there.
Well, I think that the hope is that the envelopes would never be necessary now that name, image, and likeness is in the picture, and athletes will be able to
metaphorical envelopes. Yeah, there's no envelopes anymore. Now the envelopes are endorsement contracts.
Stephen, do you know if the program's doing anything to prepare their current guys or incoming guys potentially about name, image, and likeness like that? I saw a tweet today. I can't remember the exact player, but it's an Indiana player who tweeted out a message that said, hey, starting on this date, we're going to be able to make money on our name, image, likeness. If you have any interest in getting with me for me to, promote your item on social media, hit me up. Do you know if Memphis has said or if they're preparing anything like that?
Yeah, there'll be, so I believe the July 1st, which is that Friday, Thursday is kind of the date everybody has circled. So I know Memphis is working. They're going to announce a partnership with a company that will kind of help them without the entire process. So the people I've talked to, some are, I guess, excited about the future, and some are a little more concerned about how exactly it will be regulated. Like you said, I think, of course, schools will probably prefer the athletes go through them. I think Memphis will have, I guess, select businesses they have preferred partnerships with. But from my understanding, it's just like the kid tweeted out. I saw a recruit tweet this. I think he was an incoming freshman. So they're getting started early. He had a similar message. Hey, starting July 1st, you have any name, image, or likeness opportunities for me? My DMs are open. So we know how big, especially basketball, is in this city. So I'm really curious to see what businesses are kind of lining up, waiting for the end of this week to kind of reach out to, a guy like a Lester or a guy like an ALO to try to build those relationships with. But I know Memphis is prepared, and they seem like they think they have a good handle on what exactly they want to do when they launch it this week.
So I will have my eyes focused on the NBA draft. As you've already mentioned, Geoff, Larry Brown is probably the next step or the next big piece of Tigers news that could be on the horizon here. Anything else? Like what's going on in the world of Tigers? I need the update. I bet you Tigers fans want the update. What's next for Tigers basketball? This is for either of you, Stephen or Geoff.
I'll turn that over to Stephen. Go ahead, Stephen. Take it away. What should people be? Besides the arrival of Larry Brown, the official news that Penny's not going anywhere, the arrival of Larry Brown, what's next to look for?
I think it's recruiting. The city eats it up. I know Memphis right now, I mentioned him earlier, Jalen Duren is a guy that, depending on who you talk to, many people believe Memphis is considered Memphis, Miami, Kentucky, G League, professional opportunities. He's a guy that's reportedly supposed to reclassify into 2021. So if Memphis is able to get this kid, he's a 5-star center. Scouts have compared him to Bam Adebayo. He's a lot more developed than Musa, so it wouldn't necessarily be just, bringing in another raw big man. This is a guy that's a excellent two-way player. He would be maybe the first post guy in a while. I feel like Memphis could just dump it down to on the block, could actually get you a bucket. Besides him, Chris Livingston is a guy that I've heard a number of people say that Memphis is the favorite for, another 5-star wing. He has a brother that's, from what I've been told, is a package deal, and I think Memphis offered him recently, which has them in a good spot as well, too. And, of course, there are a number of other recruits they're hosting. So I think right now it's just about saying, can Memphis find one or maybe two more players, possibly a reclassify or a transfer to bring in? We know they're still active. I believe they have 1 or 2 scholarships available. So I think along with Larry Brown and Penny Stain, it's just about, can they find one more player? I still think they need a point guard, but it looks like they may kind of zero in on a big or just another guard in general. So that would be kind of the biggest thing for me.
We here in Memphis, we know packages. Like, packages are what we do in Memphis. We move them, we handle them with packages. We should be able to do this. Well, it seems to me, Drew, you are right in the ship. You're driving the ship here. It seems to me we've cleared up all the big mysteries. Should we sign off and wish people a happy 4th?
Yes, that was my next step. Actually, what I was going to do is I was going to be greedy and I was going to plug my own podcast.
Oh, that's a wise choice.
Which is the Daily Memphian Memphis Grizzlies podcast, which Chris and I try to do almost every single week. Chris Harrington, that is. And Chris is on vacation this week, but he comes back next week, and we got big plans for the NBA draft coverage. So make sure you go check all that out. Make sure you are reading everything that Stephen and Geoff write about the Tigers. So until next time, I guess we don't know when next time will be. Hopefully a recruiting update in the middle of the summer. But until next time, for Drew, Stephen, and for Geoff, thanks for listening. You could get this podcast or any other Daily Memphian podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.